Welcome. I am Dr. Matthew Hicks, and I'm the founder of Synaptic Institute. And I'll say just a few things here to get us started, and then we're gonna, pass the baton around here a little bit. So Synaptic Institute is a nonprofit organization. We are a clinic focusing on mental health. And we are also a psilocybin training program. We also offer ketamine-assisted therapy training because that's a service we offer. Been doing it for a while now, and so that is for professionals who also want to offer that service. It's mostly geared toward therapists and doctors, but the psilocybin training program is a part of the Measure 109 outfit. We're accredited by 3 different agencies, through OHA, through HEC, the Higher Education Coordinating Commission, and then we've also added another accrediting agency called the Global Accreditation Council, and that is because we have a partnership with Ubiquity University. And I'll say just a few things about them, if this interests anybody. And this will be a part of our relationship with Jonathan and Evolved Mushrooms as well. So it's all related. But Ubiquity is a C Corp and like a public benefit. No, I said C Corp. I meant B Corp, public benefit company that offers kind of like paradigm shifting educational programs and degrees. And they have partnerships with various institutions, as well as offer a lot of their own content where you can earn a degree. But they also have these relationships where they can do degree completion programs. So we've entered into a partnership with them so that people who complete our training program can go on to earn either a master's or a PhD in entheogenic medicine. So this is a new relationship. We have been working on the details for a while, and we're pretty much ready to sign documents and announce it to the world. So I'm just giving you all a heads up. If that interests you, you can check out that information will be made more public probably next week. So stay tuned. By registering for this event, you'll be automatically added to our newsletter mailing list, which feel free to unsubscribe at any point if you'd like, but you'll be automatically added, so you'll get that announcement when it's official and available and whatnot. The other thing I want to say too that is a little bit of a shift for us is that we have taken our psilocybin training program and kind of broken it up into modules, and we're making those individual modules, not all of them, but many of them available for individual purchase. And so if you're interested in the program, but maybe don't want to commit to the whole thing, you can take some of our pre-recorded content. So that's the part that's available is basically pictures. We're kind of holding the more interactive stuff that's cohort based, because we want to keep a cohesive cohort together, where people can interact and be vulnerable and get to know each other, rather than have people kind of jumping in and out of individual courses. So but you can take these pre-recorded courses individually. And if you want to join the main program at another time, you have to go through our application process, but you'll get kind of a prorated tuition at that point. So I just want to show you briefly the list of courses that are available. We use Thinkific platforms, that's what I'm referring to here. But you can take some of these courses. They come out to be roughly $40 per hour of training. They have little quizzes in them. You can click view more, and there's a whole bunch. There's a couple of free ones too, if you're interested in that. For example, this one is just information about our retreats. If you've been in another training program of any kind, whether it's a full certification licensure one in Oregon or some other program outside of Oregon, and you want to just refine your skills and join us for one of our retreats, you're welcome to do that. We have a minor application process to go through that. But more information is available there. And then we have a whole bunch of other courses. I'm not going to talk about all of them here for the sake of time, but you can check them out. And just these, you can just, they're on demand. You can sign up and take them. So like I said, I'll drop the link for this in the chat here in just a second. And feel free to check that out. Now, with all that, and as I need to clear my throat, I'm going to hand things off to Dr. Olivia Giguère here, who is going to talk about some of the benefits of some of the mushrooms that you'll be learning to potentially grow through this mushroom cultivation course. And then after she's done, she's going to hand it off to Jonathan, who's going to be the primary speaker tonight. So Olivia, take it away.
Right. Sorry about that. Thank you for bearing with me while I got set up there. My name is Dr. Olivia Giguère, and I am a naturopathic doctor at Synaptic Institute. Tonight, I'm just going to be introducing some of the benefits of just 3 medicinal mushrooms before Jonathan takes us into learning about the basics of how to cultivate mushrooms like this. All right, so Matthew already gave you a brief overview of who he is. Again, I'm a naturopathic doctor and I'm working in the clinic doing psychedelic ketamine therapy. I'm also helping to run Synaptic Institute and our psilocybin and ketamine assisted therapy training programs. And Matthew already gave you a lot of background on our institute itself. We can dive right in. So let's start with cordyceps. This mushroom is getting a lot of attention these days. Some of you may have seen The Last of Us, a sci-fi show about these mushrooms kind of taking over. But as of now, they're still just incredibly beneficial to us. One of their best benefits is for improving physical stamina. And this is in terms of, athleticism, endurance. And there are 3 different constituents within cordyceps, which have mainly been studied to confer these benefits. One of those is general polysaccharides from the mushrooms themselves. These are long sugar chains. And 2 of those specifically are adenosine and cordycepin. These constituents lead to enhanced athletic ability by improving cardiovascular functioning. So that means they help your heart and your blood vessels to work better and more efficiently. They improve lung capacity from what we've seen. And they also benefit our circadian rhythms. So the circadian rhythm is a hormonal system which dictates our sleep and wake cycles. Often when we're thinking about athletic performance, we more so just think about, what are our hearts and our lungs doing in the actual moment of that athletic exertion, not thinking too much about the rest that we get beforehand. How well do we wake up in the morning? How easily do we fall asleep at night? How restful is our sleep at night? And that is where the circadian rhythm supports comes in with cordyceps, which is a really unique and beautiful aspect of the way they work. Another way that they help to improve physical stamina is by reducing adrenal stress, or helping our body cope with adrenal stress. What I mean by this is when our body enters a physically stressful situation, this could be a perceived threat, or this could be, intense running, endurance running, sprinting, working out at the gym, anything like that. Our body kicks into gear and our kidneys or our adrenal system produces stress hormones, and those allow our body to, respond to that stress. If this goes on for too long, our bodies can get really worn down. Sometimes our bodies don't recover as well from this. And so this just helps our endocrine system to recover as quickly as possible, such that it can, exert itself again over time. These constituents in cordyceps have also been shown to decrease oxidative stress. So oxidation leads to inflammation in the body. And by decreasing inflammation, our bodies recover more quickly. Finally, another benefit that's been studied that's like a little bit more recent in our understanding is that cordyceps can actually help to increase ATP production from each of our cells. So this is our cellular form of energy. Some of you who might not be in the medical world might remember this from high school biology, the production of ATP, but you can think of it as, fuel for our cells. It could be gas or firewood, and cordyceps actually increases our mitochondrial output of this ATP, making it so more energy is available for our muscles to burn. All right, let's talk about lion's mane next. This is a very, very beautiful mushroom that is also a lovely culinary mushroom. And one of its main functions that we can think about is its ability to enhance cognitive function. So not only does it help improve the way our brains work, but it can also support our mood. It helps to support mood by promoting the production of certain neurotransmitters. Here I have serotonin, norepinephrine, and dopamine written down. Those all play a huge factor in, how happy or satisfied or alert and awake we feel. Another way that lion's mane helps to improve mood is by decreasing inflammation. Again, it can act as an antioxidant, very similar to the way cordyceps does. If we have less neuroinflammation, the better our brain can work, the better our bodies work in general. And finally, it can help with APA axis regulation. So the adrenal system, which I was talking about in the last slide, is a part of this hormonal axis. So basically, it helps our bodies to regulate in response to stress, be it prolonged or acute. The next way that it can help with enhancing cognitive function is by promoting neurotropic factors. So trophic means growth. So through lion's mane, we see an increase in BDNF and NGF. So this is brain-derived neurotrophic factor and neural growth factor. So these proteins inside of our brain actually help to stimulate new neuron and nerve growth. So in our brains, that's where the neurons are. We can start forming new neural pathways, but the nerve growth and healing, that can happen throughout the rest of our body as well. So I've seen lion's mane used in different nervous system disorders, from Bell's palsy to more, more complex nerve disorders. I'll just leave it at that. All right, and our third mushroom tonight, turkey tail, another beloved mushroom of the Pacific Northwest. We are here in Portland, and I'm sure there are a lot of people tuning in from Portland tonight, and this mushroom goes all over the forests here in the Pacific Northwest. One of the main functions, or what main uses of turkey tail, is to enhance immune function. Two of the realms in which it's been studied most are as an antiviral and also an anti-cancer supplement. So the antiviral activity, scientists have found, mostly comes from the beta glucans that are found in extracts of the mushroom. These beta glucans act as immunostimulants. So they literally get into our system and kick it into high gear. They increase all of our immune cells that help to, track down pathogens. And it also increases our innate immunity's ability to then mount an immune response once some sort of pathogen has been identified. Studies are coming out about the use of turkey tail for treating influenza, COVID-19, things like that. The anti-cancer benefits are almost more impressive, though. So the constituents of turkey tail have been shown to be directly toxic to cancer cells. The constituents have also been shown to increase our own innate immunity against cancer cells. So all of us have cells that are replicating every single day, and our body does a really amazing job of monitoring our cell growth and replication for any sort of deleterious effects. This means that cells are starting to become cancer-like. Our body will seek those out and kill those cells. When this mechanism doesn't work effectively, that is when we see cancer developing. So not only can turkey tail help to directly eliminate cancer cells, but it also helps our own body in its own process against cancer cells. In China, both China and Japan, extracts of turkey tail have been approved clinically as adjuvant treatment to chemotherapy in treating cancer, which I think is beautiful. And studies have shown that there is tremendous improvement in quality of life, as well as an increase in survival rates of people who use this treatment as an adjuvant to chemotherapy. So I've done a really quick outline here of just 3 mushrooms and just a couple of their beneficial properties. All of them have so much more. And you'll be able to learn about a lot more of that through a lot of the work that Jonathan does. So at this point in time, I am going to hand it over to Jonathan. Let's get into cultivation.
Thank you so much, Team Synaptic. I appreciate that. Olivia, thank you. That was wonderful. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I know it's late in the evening on a Wednesday, so I'm appreciative that you're here and joining us today. What I wanted to do was take some time to introduce myself, some of the work that I do, and why I feel so compelled to help share the knowledge that I'm passionate about in the field of mycology. Of course, mycology is the study of fungi, and it's one of the most interesting fields that I had no idea I was going to land in, that just seemed to grip me due to sheer fascination. And I'm excited to do a really broad overview of some of the different elements and themes within the cultivation practice that a lot of people may not be aware of, and some of the interesting applications of fungi as well. So let's begin. Let's see here. Can you all see my screen okay? Okay. And I love to also make this interactive. So if you have any thoughts, I got my chat open right here. Please type something and I'll happily introduce different topics or tangent with you as much as I can. So please feel free to chat anytime. So my name is Jonathan Fredette. I founded Evolved Mushrooms in 2019. And I did this on a mission to help support the communities around me. The world of mushrooms absolutely fascinated me, but specifically because of their medical applications. A lot of the things that Olivia was mentioning was just the sheer profound effect that mushrooms can have and their uniqueness played on our nervous system and our brain and our energy levels. And it's something that enhanced my well-being so much. And as a bit of a health nerd, it was something that I couldn't turn away from. And so I worked in pathological laboratories at Oregon Health and Science University for several years. I worked in the cooking industry. I worked in the field of nutrition. And all of these types of things kind of coalesced into the field of mycology. And I found myself cultivating mushrooms. But what I really found was that mycology was more of a gateway to all of these different new topics that I really didn't have a lot of exposure to. Diving deeper into nutrition, sustainability, unique packaging, different connections with different community members, understanding psychological wellness and psychological healing on a much deeper level than I've seen in any other types of communities. And so the field of mushrooms and mycology itself isn't simply just cultivating mushrooms. It has broadened me to better understanding even my own history and how I can better my own life and the lives of the people around me. And so I hope to share a little bit about that passion with you today. So if you're ready, here we go. There's a couple different applications of fungi that you might not be aware of. There's businesses like Ecovative. They're creating things like mushroom leather. I think Adidas currently has a line with them in which they're using mycelium to create leather. And as you know, we have unsustainable farming practices in which we harvest leather and meat, and fungi can present a completely sustainable alternative to those things. So in addition to mushroom leather, they're creating mycelium-based foam products. And of course, they're growing out the mycelium. And if you don't know what mycelium is, the mycelium is the fungus. It is the organism, but it's in the root-like matrix structure that exists before it actually fruits the mushrooms. The mushrooms are the things that we encounter all the time throughout our day-to-day life. And of course, we use as medicine. But the applications of mycelium are becoming very, very interesting. So I highly recommend you check out some of the work that Ecovative is doing and some of their partnerships, in addition to mushroom packaging. So they're using mycelium to actually create this really dry and, of course, completely compostable packaging for different products. I saw one organization use it to ship out their whiskey bottles that they had for people. And so you could partner with this organization, have completely sustainable compostable packaging that you feel good about putting back into the environment versus styrofoam, which takes years and years to deplete. So they're also starting to create building materials out of this. These are mycelium-based bricks that are very, very hardy, durable, fire resistant, and are an interesting alternative to some of the more toxic modalities of building that we actually encounter. So, it's fantastic to look at our history with fungi, because I think a lot of people don't understand how vital they revolutionized our life. Antibiotics in World War II, specifically the advent of the discovery of penicillin, which was found on accident. Essentially, they had a petri dish that had a species of bacteria growing on it, which was penicillin, of course, or excuse me, they had a species of bacteria, and then they got penicillin on it. An agar dish looks like this. This is a fully inoculated agar dish with mycelium, and I'll describe that a little bit later. But what they found was that the penicillin fungi actually was able to consume the bacteria, and lo and behold, you found antibiotics. Now, this wasn't new to human history, but it was a complete revolution at that time that even led to our success in World War II. But we know that the ancient Egyptians even had a relationship with penicillin and using fungi as an antibiotic. Many people here in this chat will probably know about the work of Michael Pollan and some of the interesting experiments with bioremediation, where there's this subsect of field called mycoremediation, myco meaning mushrooms, in which they take material of mycelium that absorbs a lot of the toxic wastes that are produced by oil spills and things like that, industrial waste, and they're able to transform it, break down those heavy compounds, and actually allow us to add that back into the environment, put the mycelium back into the environment without it being completely toxic. Of course, this is a complete oversimplification of the field of bioremediation, but it's a significant aspect of exploration that a lot of people are looking at when applying fungi in just the application of creating a more sustainable future. Of course, sustainable food. I mean, how many people here have had a really good mushroom dish? If you haven't, I highly recommend trying maitake. This is my favorite culinary mushroom. It's incredibly healthy for you. Amazing source of antioxidants, amazing source of beta glucans, like Olivia was talking about. And this compound called ergothioneine, which has the ability to sweep through the body, pulling free radicals and allowing you to excrete them, and thus reducing your inflammation and improving your mood in general and your overall chronic health, like reducing chronic health symptoms. Maitake is fantastic. I highly recommend anyone just try maitake. If you get one thing out of this webinar, just try maitake, cook with some mushrooms. Natural medicine, this is where I find my home in the world of mycology. I have found such profound impact on my own personal health with the natural medicine found from fungi. In the worlds of Merlin Sheldrake, we have been working with mushrooms since before we were human. And so oftentimes people find such a kindred connection to fungi, but they don't really know why. They think it's alien, but it works so well with the human body. Well, we've co-evolved alongside fungi. And if you follow the work of Paul Stamets, we've evolved from fungi. But of course, that was billions of years and deep in our lineage. But we've worked with these medicines throughout human history. And there's proof that we have, even whether it's cave paintings or some, there's a couple frozen bodies that were found mummified due to the ice at the top of an alpine range, and they had mushrooms on their belts. They use them as a medicinal supplement, and they've done it for centuries. We know that the Egyptians used them as well. So all the paintings here, by the way, are the work of my friend Martin Bridge. He's kind enough to let me use a lot of his artwork. Highly recommend checking out his work. But I found a home within the field of mycology. I call my medicinal mycology, or how can we apply mushrooms to create natural medicine to benefit our daily wellness, to optimize our health. And the thing I'm continually profoundly surprised with how many different benefits mushrooms have in our daily wellness. One of the things that I just discovered was the microbiome support of turkey tail mushrooms. And one of my clients who had been spending tens of thousands of dollars for several years really struggled with his deep gut health. Turkey tail has the ability to help go in and reset that. And so, and in addition to that, these mushrooms have relatively low side effects or no negative side effects unless consumed in gross quantities at which your budget's going to take a hit anyways. And so it's a very important arena to explore as we move forward as a species in addressing some of the chronic health issues that we have. And that's my passion. So for several years, we have been creating natural medicine, specifically in the form of liquid tincture. This is one of our cordyceps tinctures. Like Olivia was mentioning, cordyceps we use with a lot of athletes. And it has been just an amazing couple of years just seeing how those mushrooms behave in the flask and seeing how they present, how they taste, and how they enrich our senses. So we have a full line of tinctures, and that's the line that we decided to move forward in. And that's the type of products that we decided to do because of that like sensory experience with them, or the taste. Here is, there's some antler reishi here. I wanted to include this too because antler reishi is a very medicinal species, but it's also beautiful. Like it grows essentially like a bonsai tree. And so whether you want the medicinal values or simply want to have a mushroom that has a tremendous aesthetic value, reishi is a beautiful mushroom to grow. And it's actually my next project coming up. Here are some of the flasks that we had years ago when we first started, 2,000 milliliters, we would do runs of that. Now that's a little too small for our demand, which is great. But we have these different herbal mushroom blends that are unique to most people. And we've been formulating those for some time with our clients and our community members and found a lot of success with using those. And again, I'm just sharing with you some of the passion that I have that I found in the mushroom world, because I come from the background of public health and wanting to find novel ways to help myself heal that aren't detrimental, that aren't overly harmful to my body or have drastic side effects. And it's just a fun field. We work with extractions all the time. So this one I had to get a shot of. This is a reishi tincture, a dual extract for those of you who are nerdy to the world of mushroom extracts. So you have one side that's just water and one that's alcohol, and then you combine the two because they both pull different types of constituents. But it was such a fantastic shot. And yes, there's a filter on this, but I swear it still looks, it looked great in the sunlight. And it reminded me of just, the beauty of being able to work with something as a medicine in the flask like that. And so turkey tail, one of the mushrooms that many people find favorite is a saprophytic mushroom, which means that it decomposes material, which means that it's actually relatively easy to cultivate. And it's one of the most profound mushrooms that I found. It grows all over here wild. So we barely grow, we don't even need to grow it. We essentially just find people that wildcraft or we wildcrafted ourselves. But one of the unique things that I did was I was able to turn it into a crystalline extract powder. Well, I wanted to make an extract powder, but what came out was a crystalline, and that was amazing. So, to save, not to go too in depth here, but essentially what I did was I made a big vat of tea, and then that I steeped for multiple days. And then I essentially heated it off. I essentially evaporated all of the water off. And this is what was left. And it was just magical. And I believe that as essentially a polysaccharide compound that I was able to then give to some clients. And it's one of the things that I'll teach about in this upcoming course. Cordyceps, although, was the mushroom that really got me into cultivation on a deeper level. The cordyceps was a mushroom that took me a year to cultivate because, like many people, they found, it's a very difficult journey to grow cordyceps if you don't have all the right pieces in place. But I was able to source the right genetics and finally crack the code. And when I did, I felt like there was a breakthrough that happened, and it was and I was able to catch this snapshot here. This is looking down in a mason jar. Actually, you can grow cordyceps in a mason jar, which is quite fascinating. And I was able to connect with athletes and help them by supporting their cardiovascular system, by supporting their lung health, and including several high-level jiu-jitsu athletes who were sick leading up to a competition and needed something quickly so that they can rebound and then fight. And we've done so successfully, and I'm really happy to say that. So here's one of the cordyceps extracts that we've done. And you can see the little pieces of cordyceps floating at the top, but the color is incredible. And that's the one thing that I keep finding from the world of mushrooms is, wow, there's just a potency here. There's true medicine to be found here. And I think that we're starting to redefine that term medicine. Like, it's almost been, I don't want to use the word colonized, but in a sense it has been. Medicine has to fall within this one category, and you need a degree in order to claim it as medicine. But you interact with the compounds within the fungi, the kingdom of fungi, and your system will tell you it's medicine. You will know, and it's healing. So I have to plug our products just a little bit here. We do sell tinctures. They're online. They're going to be 20% off all throughout this next week. These are our pure extract mushrooms. Organic mushrooms. We use very, very clean cane alcohol. It's potent. You'll taste it. You'll feel it. We don't use any mycelium or grain or anything like that. We're really passionate about the quality that we offer our clients. And so if you're interested, head over to evolvedmushrooms.com. That's our website. The discount's already locked and loaded, so you're ready to go. And grab yourself some tincture if you'd like to support yourself. If you'd like to have a consultation too, feel free to email me and reach out. Okay, but with that, I'd like to shift gears a little bit and take a step back. One of the things that I have found, that I think a lot of other people have found too, is the profound experience from mushrooms. And of course, there's a diversity of different types of mushrooms, but specifically with entheogenic mushrooms, we're starting to find more and more that there's evidence to support the fact that our ancient ancestors used these in ceremonial practice. And when you take entheogenic mushrooms, a lot of people report that same kindred kind of familiarity, in that perhaps our DNA has encountered this type of substance before many, many times in our history. And so if you follow the work of Brian Murescu in the Eleusinian Mysteries, he wrote the text, The Immortality Key. New evidence has surfaced that our ancient ancestors used a form of extract of ergot, which is a fungus, in a ceremonial practice that was several times stronger than psilocybin. And a lot of the imagery of the different types of gods and goddesses, such as Demeter and Persephone, emerged from those luminous spaces. And so to me, I feel as though we are reconnecting to a large piece of our history that's actually missing. And so for me, the impact of the work that we're exploring in medicine goes much deeper than just helping our health and wellness. It's actually connecting to a lineage that was laid down by our ancestors that goes back further than we understand. Here's the goddess. This is Demeter and Persephone, who were the two goddesses that were celebrated in the Eleusinian Mysteries. And I highly recommend, it's a great YouTube or Google rabbit hole to look at the Eleusinian Mysteries, which were held by our Greek ancestors for about 2 millennia, it was estimated, in which they had sacramental practice of entheogenic mushrooms and substances. And here's a painting that's actually behind me as well, of a maenad dripping with honey with all of the different mushrooms growing from her. The maenads followed Dionysus, and Dionysus was supposedly the god of fermentation and mushrooms and celebration and festivities. And that archetype plays out throughout many different schools of thought, many different religions and mythologies. You can see that archetype present, and a lot of it has to do with a connection with mushrooms. So it's very fascinating to see that imagery pop out throughout history, including this Xochipilli, which is a South American god, very similar, but obviously separated from, by an entire ocean, yet the similar archetypes exist. And this was similarly a mushroom, or excuse me, a god of festivities, a god of mushrooms. So it's fascinating to take a little bit of a look at that. And when we teach about cultivation of, it's connected to all of these stories because it's part of the story. It's not just about the agar dish and the mycelium and the mushrooms. It's deeper than that. There's a whole rich history, and that's part of what informs my education and informs the work that I do with mushrooms. So let's get into some of the substance, and let me just make sure there's no chats going on here. So let me just stop sharing my screen. Are we all good? Looks like we're good. All right. So I'll just keep going. Anyone has any questions or comments? You're of course welcome to chime in. So over the past 4 years, I started Evolved Mushrooms in 2019. I immediately started teaching cultivation practices because I loved it so much. I had been cultivating for about 5 years since then. And I have broken down this essentially like 5-module focal point of cultivating mushrooms that I feel like if everyone focuses on each of those intently, you will have great success in your cultivation. Does that mean the mushroom cultivation is easy? It doesn't. It's actually quite a different path than a lot of people. It's not just gardening tomatoes or I don't know, even cannabis. I haven't really cultivated much cannabis, but I know it's significantly different. Well, it's because mushrooms come from a completely different kingdom. It's not the kingdom of plants, it's the kingdom of fungi. And so I've broken down these 5 stages for you, and I want you to know that this is a reference point that you can use for cultivating mushrooms. And within our upcoming course that I'll talk about later, these will be our 5 focal points that we'll be moving forward through. So what I've done is I've linked those 5 stages of the growth cycle of fungi to the process of cultivation. And I thought that was clever, but maybe it's a little cheeky. But anyways, you have the spore. The fungi start from the spore. That's the original genetic unit of reproduction. It germinates into the mycelium and then bulk and grows until it's a resilient entity. Finally, then it has the ability to produce mushrooms to reproduce and to spread its spores. And thus the life cycle ends and it continues. But then in the 5th, you have post-production. That's where we get into creating products, extraction, of course, which is our favorite. And so within the upcoming course, I'll actually be introducing mushroom extraction and talking about different types of mushroom products out there, some that may not be the highest quality, some that may be better quality, and why you would compare the 2 of them. In the field of mushroom cultivation, you are essentially cultivating mycelium. You're working with that dense matrix. And if you haven't explored mycelium, even as a concept, I highly recommend checking out Entangled Life by Merlin Sheldrake. He breaks it down in such a magical way as a microbiologist, but there's tons of great, fantastic fungi. The Netflix documentary does a great job. There's tons of YouTube rabbit holes. Mycelium is, in the words of Merlin Sheldrake, the connective tissue of ecosystems. It connects different species of trees and has allowed essentially the terrestrialization of land here on Earth. It was thought that we moved from the ocean and onto Earth when we were primordial species, and that fungi were actually some of the first colonists to help go into from the depths into like the shallow pools and start breaking down some of the minerals to make them available for other organisms to then flourish and begin to grow. And so without fungi, it is thought that we actually couldn't have evolved here on land. And indeed, in addition to that, plant roots themselves may exhibit the same behavior because they learn from the fungi, that the root structure was actually first a fungal byproduct. And over about 95% of plant species have a fungal counterpart in their roots, and that's mycorrhizal species. And I go in depth about mycorrhizal species. Those are the good ones. Those are the ones like morels or chanterelles that you have a hard time finding at the store because they're seasonal. Well, those mushrooms rely on plant symbiosis to grow. And the theme of symbiosis is prevalent throughout mushroom cultivation, which is fantastic. The mushrooms teach us you can't live in an isolated cube. You exist as a byproduct of your ecosystem, and so do we as humans. So we have a lot to learn from fungi. These rhizomorphs are the extended little tips, of the mycelium. This is actually something that I grew here. And you could see those tips growing and searching for food. And mycelium will exhibit different growth characteristics based on species and based on the food present, or based on opportunities, or if there's pathogens present that it needs to fight. And so you're working side by side with mycelium to give it its, the best source of nutrition and protection possible so that it gives you mushrooms, essentially. And I want to just take a moment and start with the first process of what we typically talk about in mushroom cultivation, which is working with cultures. And if you know anything about working in the hospital or pathology, you work typically with cultures, whether you're detecting if bacteria exists on a plate or on a certain part of the human body. But this, if there's another thing to take away from this webinar, I highly recommend you take this away, and it's this. If you want to be successful in mushroom cultivation, whether it's gourmet or medicinal mushroom cultivation, I cannot stress the importance enough of working with your own cultures, whether it is in the form of agar or liquid culture, which we'll discuss. It will not only allow you to have an ample library of mycelium present in this really nice condensed way shown here on the screen, but you can then use it to clean up your fungi if it's dirty. And you can essentially amplify your success by making sure it's clean. And so if there's any takeaway, a lot of people just skip over the stage when they get the grow bag and they inoculate it with spores. And then when they get 2 mushrooms, they're mad. And it's well, did you work with that mycelium well enough for it to flourish and produce that abundant canopy that you want? And working with cultures allows you to do that. And we'll go way into depth in the course of that. But I just wanted to introduce culture work. And it's not only that, but it's really fun. I mean, I'm a nerd, so I might be biased, but I love watching mycelium grow in different patterns on the agar dish. It tells you if a culture is clean. It will show you how vigilant of a culture it's going to grow. I have an agaricon culture for those who know mushrooms, and it's still growing. And I inoculated it a month ago, and everything else is fully grown. So I highly recommend working with agar. The other aspect that really propelled me forward in mushroom cultivation was, in a practical sense, was working with liquid culture. So typically people, will buy, like I said, a grow kit and a spore syringe online. They'll inject it and they'll just pray to God it works, and that spore syringe probably costs $30, right? And then it's gone. Well, if you actually take the time to germinate out your spores into what we call a liquid culture, which is essentially a liquid media that allows that mycelium to grow. You can see the filaments of mycelium within this syringe here. You will maximize and just save so much money. Not only that, you'll nudge along the fungi through their next cycle of growth, and thus reducing the amount of time it takes for it to colonize the next substrate. And so it's an incredibly important step that I highly recommend. Now, moving on, if you aren't familiar with mushroom cultivation and you haven't heard the term grain spawn, I'm happy to introduce it to you. Grain spawn is an essential stage of mushroom cultivation. Grain spawn is an essential stage because you need to take the mycelium from its initial culture and give it a diet that is worthy of creating a very, very robust organism. And unlike, I think this is one of the bigger hangups with mushroom cultivation versus something like growing, again, we'll just use that metaphor, growing tomatoes in your garden. The tomato needs, of course, the sunlight and the water, and it photosynthesizes and creates its own sugars. Fungi don't operate like that at all. They actually, much like humans, they have to break down nutrients and absorb it in order to grow. And so, like humans, they love carbohydrates. They love grain. And so we work with grain side by side, specific types of grain, to feed our fungi so that it grows into that robust organism that's strong enough to produce mushrooms and healthy enough and vigorous enough. So there's all types of grain spawn, and in the course that I will lead soon, we'll talk about how to actually break down grain spawn, how to cook it, how to sterilize it. That's a big, hang up that a lot of people have is, there's this whole clean aspect and sterilization. I don't need that for cannabis cultivation. I don't need that for gardening. Well, the mushrooms, unfortunately, the mycelium is neck and neck with the world, and so it requires protection in its early stages. And what that means is you have to clean the quote unquote substrate, which is the material that you grow it on. So if there's another big takeaway from this webinar, it's that don't be afraid because of the fact that you have to sterilize something. It's just another step, just like you would cook. You know, if you know how to use an Instapot, you're already pressure cooking, you're already sterilizing. So here's a I wanted to include this picture. So this is one of my friends who grew grain spawn in a jar. There's a lot of really cool reusable resources that you can use versus, you know, the industry standard are these autoclave bags that you'll probably see or even purchase online, versus there's a lot of sustainable ways to cultivate mushrooms, and mason jars is a really clever one where you can use these airport lids that are retrofitted for syringes due to the liquid culture, and you can grow mycelium in these jars quite effectively, actually. And then of course clean them and reuse them, so you don't have to dump a bunch of plastic back into the earth. And that's one of the bigger things that we're actually looking at in the mycology world, is like how to increase sustainability of the production, which is of course very, very significant and important and relevant, because, you know, mushrooms are an agent of sustainability. They decompose the world and they allow us to move through the cycles of decomposition and recomposition back into the ecosystem. And so, of course, we would want to align with those values and not create a ton of plastic. And so that's something that is of deep consideration. So after you create the bulk substrate and you've got your colonized grain spawn, you would want to create another bulk substrate, and you typically add that grain spawn to it. You hydrate it, and whether it is something like this, which is like a faux manure, or cocoa coir you may have heard of, it's mixed in together with the vermiculite in order to, and the grain spawn in order to produce fruiting bodies. But then there's a lot of other mushrooms like turkey tail or reishi that actually fruit off of wood. And so we have to use wood substrates in order to grow fungi. So if you have friends that have wood chip beds, you know, those are a great source to create fungi from. And one of the things that we'll look at in this upcoming course that I'm excited about is how to grow oysters in an outdoor bed. It's super fun. It's really low tech, really easy. You can use some mycelium that has already produce fruit from another friend and just like repurpose it and regrow it. That's one of the big themes that I've found through mushroom cultivation, is like the multiplicity of mycelium. You could take a big chunk apart, throw it into the garden, take the other part, use it in the lab, and they'll both grow. They're the same organism, but they're going to grow differently. And so that's essentially what you're doing with mushroom cultivation, is you're working with a culture and expanding it out into a point where it's successful and then producing a fruiting body for you. And if you haven't seen mushroom fruiting logs, you can do that too. It's a really fun project where you drill holes and inoculate it with wooden dowels. And in about a year, hopefully, fingers crossed, you'll have a nice, beautiful flush, typically around the fall, of like maybe shiitake or oysters. And then what happens is like it'll go dormant again. The mycelium will just chill. And then the next year, it'll give you another flush. And then maybe the next year gives you another flush. And it's a very creative and beautiful thing to have like in your garden, is these nice little Lincoln log mushroom towers, and it'll just produce an abundance of food for you. And typically what people find is that it's too much food at that moment. They're like, hey, does anyone want some shiitake? I have way too much. I've eaten pounds of shiitake because of these logs. And so there's this natural generosity and abundance that comes from mushrooms that you may find as well. If you're successful with mushroom cultivation, your issue may be surplus, which is great. And so that means that you get to connect with friends and family who needs them. So here's some baby primordia of oysters that were popping out my outdoor bed. That was the therapy that I did during quarantine in 2020, was, all right, I'll just start some gardening projects like everyone else, but I'll do some oyster beds. And they were quite successful. You know, we used some straw, we pasteurize it, which is pretty easy. You essentially clean it with boiling water, add a burlap sack down, again, grain spawn that has the mycelium growing on it. You know, you drench it in a bucket. Pasteurization is an aspect, again, of cleaning substrate, which we dive into. If you want to learn, again, encourage you to take our course coming up. And then lo and behold, you know, I had a nice, that was like my first oyster that just was emerging. And you could see the different pockets of mycelium growing underneath that burlap sack in my outdoor garden. And, you know, there's lunch right there. And the cool thing about that is that, you know, it's a low fat, high protein, high fiber source of dense nutrition. And, you know, having a fibrous food that also has good protein and immunomodulating benefits like oysters and maitake and shiitake is incredibly significant and good in the diet, and you'll feel that. So here's some beautiful oysters. This is from Bridgetown Mushrooms. This is one of their pictures. That's the type of mushroom to grow outdoors. All right. So shifting gears a little bit, talking about entheogenic mushrooms. Of course, Oregon is one of the states here in the United States that is starting to lead the way bravely into the future of allowing people to legally cultivate entheogenic mushrooms by starting a lab and applying to the OHA in order to help provide for these service centers that will be emerging, in which people can go and have a legal psilocybin therapy with a trained facilitator. And that's where organizations like Synaptic come into play to help train educators, to train facilitators in good integrity, to help guide people through these entheogenic journeys that are quite powerful and profound and have shown to be incredibly healing for so many different people. I highly encourage you to check out any of the clinical trials by Johns Hopkins University and NYU. Some of the findings are incredibly significant when it comes to working with emotional trauma, working with cycles of addiction, negative thought patterns. And of course, this is just the beginning. And that's really one of the things that I wanted to mention right now, is that mycology is the youngest natural science. It is one of the fields that we have yet to explore thoroughly. Yet fungi, we know, have been here for potentially 1 billion years or more. And so while it's a very old organism, we are very new to be working with it. And that's commonly due to our cultural baggage. We've had such cultural fear around mushrooms. Even though there are poisonous herbs and plants out there, we still work with plants. But because fungi are a bit more ephemeral too, they pop up and then die immediately, they're more difficult to work with. And of course, cultivation practices are made accessible now due to amazing technology. I imagine that there were ancient cultivation practices of fungi, but who knew how the Egyptians grew mushrooms, but it's a great time in history to be able to explore not only the science, but the application of that. And I think one of the biggest themes is that it's because the world needs it right now. It's because our communities need it right now, that this medicine is truly emerging into the zeitgeist for us to be able to share it with our communities and to witness true transformation. And I don't say that lightly at all. And so the beautiful thing about entheogenic mushrooms too is that in the field of mycology, there's like a diversity of different what's called phenotypes. Phenotype just means the physical trait expressed by the type of genetics. So even though these are both the same species, they exhibit different growth characteristics based on where they come from. So this is actually a Cambodian species, while this one comes from the area of Chitwan. This is called Chitwan. And I love the growth characteristics of these guys, and they have little different nuances, even though they're the same species. And so the application of these and the cultivation is just an incredible different pursuit. And there are people who specifically only focus on genetics of these mushrooms, these cubensis mushrooms, and how they're going to exhibit these different cool characteristics and these new traits and potency and all these things. They're called phenohunters in the world. But there is also a diversity of other type of entheogenic mushrooms, like the one found on the cover here. This is Psilocybe azurescens, which is found here on the Oregon coast, which was one of the highest potent mushrooms found that we know of. But it grows near the ocean, so it really embodies a uniqueness. It grows amidst these very, very tall knee to waist high dune grass fields, and it grows and it's super difficult to find, quite an adventure, but also another example of the diversity found. And one of the things that I teach about is like the comparing azurescens to cyanescens and cubensis, and what that means and what the nuances of those are, and how they feel, how they have shifted people, and some caution around some of the potency. But it's a really unique area of exploration. Here we have some initial growth of the cubensis mushroom. And, one of the things that people find is like just the cultivation of it alone is something that is therapeutic. You get to really track this organism throughout its life cycle and really nurture and care for it and watch it grow. But by this place, it's unlike plants in that, these mushrooms right here within several hours may be ready to harvest, and they may be, several inches longer than they are right now, versus plants, you don't really exhibit that kind of exponential growth. But when mushrooms are ready to fruit, they fruit, and they fruit fast. And so you have to be ready for it. So it takes a certain amount of attentiveness and mindfulness to the practice too, that isn't really present in a lot of different other fields that I found, that, you really do want to nurture these organisms with care and intention, because they produce medicine for people. And so that care and intention is essential, just like any aspect of a therapeutic process. But it's essential from the beginning of the cultivation, from the sourcing of the organic materials to the sourcing of the genetics to the cultivation to, I mean, the music you play for them. All of these things are factors of significance, in my opinion. All right, so that's the introduction to medicinal mushroom cultivation, and I wanted to highlight that. I again wanted to thank my friends at Synaptic Institute for hosting me for this webinar. And before we go over to a Q&A, we are launching this Medicinal Mushroom Cultivation Masterclass. And I haven't launched anything like this before, so I'm incredibly excited. It's going to be a 5-part modality in which we are deep diving every week those essential aspects, where we're looking at creating cultures, we're looking at grain spawn, we're looking at the different types of grain, we're looking at different species, we're looking at how, in the end, how to create an extract, and we're taking you through the entire process. So this is available for pre-order. You saw it on the site of Synaptic. Matt was kind enough to show you. You can actually go. We'll send you a follow-up link. And until Monday, we're taking $100 off. We wanted it to be an exclusive benefit for the people who were kind enough to attend this webinar tonight. That if you really do want to, whether you want to start potentially entering the industry as a business owner in the field of mushrooms, or maybe you want to start a mushroom farm and feed the people of your community, or maybe you want to work with cordyceps and athletes, or create new potent antibiotic extracts with turkey tail, or there's such a massive diversity of application of fungi that we even don't know about yet. And so we always encourage experimentation. That's the one thing that I'll say is just, I love to introduce people to this field and then just watch them take off. And I've seen people explore new career paths that are just solely focused on mycology. I've seen people surpass me in their cultivation. But I really find it's an honor for me to help light that spark for people. And I love doing that. So I'm doing that in the most robust way I know possible. And that's just a deep dive, working with me starting June 19th. The first module is going to be all about biology and the even some of the mythology around fungi and how it relates to us, and a lot of the different symbiotic interactions within the ecologies surrounding fungi. And then we just get deep into the culture lab, the mycelium lab, and how to cultivate these mushrooms sustainably, and how do we cultivate them in a successful way. And I promise you that if you take this course, you'll save money in the long run, versus if you just take it and you just kind of follow the forums on Shermery, which I had to do. I've spent hundreds and hundreds of dollars wasted, thousands of dollars. I will definitely say thousands of dollars wasted on contaminated grain spawn. It happens. And so I want to help people, I also want to create a robust education where it's not just about the agar plate, and it's not just about the proper inoculation methods. It's informing you with some of the spirit of what this work means, and some of the essence of the medicinal value of these fungi. So thank you so much for joining. I know that was probably a lot of information. The green tea really kicked in right before I launched this one. So thanks for bearing through that with me. And I really just appreciate everyone for being here. And let's just, so now I wanted to take it to Q&A. So if anyone wants to hop on, you could feel free to unmic yourself. And I think for the next 20 minutes or so, we can have a full Q&A. So feel free to pick my brain. If you're a mushroom cultivator and you have a nuanced question about the best flow hood, or, you're a practitioner and you want to incorporate mushrooms, feel free to ask. You can use the chat, or you can feel free to unmute yourself and ask. Yeah. Cool. All right. But again, what we'll do is we'll send a follow-up email. The book I recommended, it is called Entangled Life by Merlin Sheldrake. And it is, you can also listen to it on audiobook. He has this really charming British accent, so it kind of lulls you to sleep a little bit when he talks about the microbiology of fungi. It's the morel species, and it's beautiful. I highly recommend it, but his book too is fascinating. And it's totally a microbiological approach, but written in a story form. So it's follow the hyphae and the mycelium, and it's fascinating. So yeah, and then of course too, we're also going to send out this recording to participants in the webinar, just in case you want to go back and look at some of the themes and kind of take some notes on the 5 different key aspects that I suggest focusing on within the field of mushroom cultivation. Let's see, about how much would supplies cost for the types of things you mentioned to begin growing mushrooms? I would say a few $100s. And that's really what I'll do in the course is I'll help break down, like you can invest in, you can invest in flow hoods and shelving and monotubs, and you can really throw a lot of money at it, or you can invest in like a pressure cooker and some mason jars and some grain, and you can grow oysters outdoors for like a couple $100 or less, or you can start with a grow bag and do like mycelium to the grow bag, and that's like less than $100. So really there's like all of these different avenues that you can enter. And what I suggest is you, just like a fungi, start slow and small and then gradually grow up. That's one of the biggest lessons that I had to learn, was that I was, all right, let's go big, let's just expand, and it just like totally backfired every time. And so it's a slow growth model for me. Yeah, there's lots of room for growth in the psychedelic therapy space. I agree with you, Haley. I 100% agree with you, and thanks for doing the work in that. What is the simplest methods? Joy, one of the simple methods, if you wanted to grow like an oyster bed, is to grab a 5-gallon bucket, get some straw, dump a bunch of hot water, heat up boiling hot water, dump it in, put the lid on. That's going to clean the straw. Buy oyster mycelium online, and then plant that in your garden by mixing the two together. And the mushrooms will start eating of course, wait till it's cool. You don't want to burn your mushrooms. And you'll plant straw in your garden bed. The mycelium will eat the straw and use it to colonize, and then will fruit mushrooms for you. All right. And again, I'll just put in the link here. evolvedmushrooms.com is my website. Matt at the very top also listed Synaptics training courses on Thinkific. Highly recommend, if you want to work with me, if you have any questions, please reach out via email. I'm at jonathan@evolvedmushrooms.com. We do have scholarship options for the course as well. And it's a good opportunity to get involved and learn. The industry is just starting. I'm in Portland, Oregon. I feel like we're at the tip of the spear, so I feel like we're kind of saturated in mushroom conversations, especially I am. But there's places in the world that really don't have this kind of medicine or don't have this kind of field. So there's a lot of opportunities. So, all right. How do you get a good spore provider? There's actually a lot. You can type in mushroom spores online. You can purchase them online. My friends at High Desert Spores here in Oregon are some of my favorites. So if you go to highdesertspores.com, that's a great website. And they have different types of reishi, different types of, unique species there. Oh, okay. Sorry, Mike, my bad. You're right. I don't know why I was just texting you that. Here, I'll send that to everyone here. evolvedmushrooms.com. Any other questions, my friends, while we're here?
There's a question about substrate. Do you use a different substrate for every time you grow a different mushroom?
I think typically you focus on grain spawn for most mushrooms in that initial growth phase of expanding the mushrooms out, and then you'll bifurcate. You'll either tend to go one way or the other, and one way is wood, in which you use wood pellets or sawdust or wood chips to grow out woody mushrooms like turkey tail, reishi, lion's mane, or you'll use like a faux compost that's like cocoa coir and vermiculite or manure, and that is typically for entheogenic mushrooms. So those are the two primary routes that you'll take. You can also do outdoor grows in which you inoculate logs, but that of course falls into the same like kind of woody characteristic. So thank you for calling that out. I appreciate that question from Mike. All right, let's see. Other questions. Is there a place you would recommend visiting in Oregon that is education for mushroom cultivation, or is surrounded by that culture? I'm in Portland, Oregon, and we just have it here. There's a ton of cool herb stores that you can go to. High Desert Spores is a great supplier of different like substrates and things like that. We're based in Portland, Oregon. I primarily operate online. So I please feel free to reach out to me. Again, I'm at jonathan@evolvedmushrooms.com in case that was missed and I said that directly. But you could also go on some hikes, like the Tryon State Park is amazing, and there's oysters that I find there commonly, or definitely artist conchs. But Mount Hood has an incredible biodiversity. I actually went out with someone who he's essentially like an encyclopedia of mushroom cultivation and or just mushroom species. And
This meeting is being
I
recorded.
was I was perplexed to see the massive diversity. So let's see, you're a licensed therapist, and it says, can I take any of your cert courses? Scotty, I'm not sure if you if that was for Matt or me, but okay, it looks like Matt also replied to that. So will an outdoor bed continue fruiting over the years, or do you need to refresh with inoculated grain spawn? That's a good question. And typically you want to keep feeding it. So one of my farmer friends will actually just continually inoculate it with wood chips to keep giving it some food. Over time, it will, if it doesn't have enough water and nutrients, it can't produce fungi, or excuse me, not fungi, the mushrooms. So you want to keep it well fed and hydrated. But you know, oftentimes it'll just continually break it down. But typically wood and wood chips is what you need to use to cultivate a lot of those different fungi. All right. Perfect. Well, that was amazing. I appreciate everyone for being here. We're about at that hour mark, which is fantastic. Again, please reach out to me at my email or visit if you would like to sign up for the course. We would love to have you. Again, that deal is going away soon, so I highly recommend getting on that if you want to deep dive mushroom cultivation with us. And I'm just telling you right now, it's a lot of fun. You know, we approach it from a holistic standpoint, and we've seen some people really take off with it and be quite successful in the field with providing extracts and tinctures to their communities. But again, go to evolvedmushrooms.com too if you'd like to check out our tinctures. And I'm just happy to be here with all of you guys. And I'll pass the baton back to my host, Matt with Synaptic.
Yeah, well, thank you everybody for being here. Don't forget to use that coupon code MyCo if you are going to sign up for the masterclass. That deal will end on it's set to end on the 5th of June 5th. So you have until Monday to decide if you want to do it. I mean, you could still do it after that. You just, the $100 offer ends at that point. So but I think that's it. You know, if you have any questions.
Yeah, one thing too, sorry, I forgot to mention this, Matt. Sorry to cut you off. We also have a price break. So if you look, there's an option to where if you can't pay the entire admission price, you can break it up over 3 consecutive payments, even though the course doesn't last for 3 months. And that we just wanted to make sure that people had greater accessibility to this course. So, you know, if you have any questions about that, again, reach out to Matt or Olivia or myself.
Yeah, and yeah, I will also be updating our course listings, you know, in the coming week or so. So if you have any questions for us at Synaptic, you can just, I'll put the info@synaptic.care is our email address. So feel free to send us a note. And otherwise, yeah, thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night. Thank you, team.
Mm-hmm.